Well, good morning, one and all. Welcome to this very special service. My name is Laurel Liefert, and I serve as the minister of the Namaqua Unitarian Universalist congregation in Loveland, which is about an hour north of those of you who are part of Boulder Valley in Lafayette. And one of the things that's particularly thrilling about this is that your minister, Boulder Valley, is Lydia, who has been a friend of our family for probably 30 years now. So not only are we closely connected congregations here in the Front Range of Northern Colorado, but also I think we have many tentacles of special connections. So I want to welcome everyone for the congregation I serve and say a special and warm hello and thank you for being with us to those of you who are from the other congregation. So Lydia.
Well, thank you, Laurel. It is an honor and a joy, and I'm kind of giddy about doing this service with you today, actually, I'm going to say. And I just want to share today that our music is going to be with from Tad Corey, Emily Jaworski, the General Assembly Virtual Choir, with Ise Barnwell, and our own One Voice. And a choir from Reverend Emily Conger's ordination. And Laurel was part of that choir. So we have an incredible array of music today also to provide you as we percolate on the subject of spiritual imagination. Our tech ushers today are Bill Beachley and Deborah Mensch, and I'm always grateful for how they help things run so smoothly for us. You will be muted during this service to improve the sound quality for everyone. But during the joys and sorrows, you will have a chance to share with our tech usher unmuting you. And then the announcements for both congregations will be shared at the end of our service. We are going to start with our fellowship's welcome words today. So I'm going to invite you to shift into gallery mode if you haven't already done so, and scroll through the screens while we say these welcome words so you can experience the lovely faces of those joining you in worship today. You are all welcome here today. In all the beauty of languages, cultures, skin tones, shapes, and sizes that come together in your uniqueness, you are welcome here. In all the ways you experience and express gender, you are welcome here. In the beauty that is who you love and how you love, you are welcome here. In all the ways you make your living and all the places you are from, you are welcome here.
Christian, pagan, humanist, Jew, Buddhist, mystic, Muslim, Unitarian Universalist. With all the traditions that inform your spiritual life, you are welcome here today. No matter how long you are away, nor how soon you will return, you are welcome here. Whether you come today with laughter in your heart or tears, you are welcome here. You are invited to join us with an open mind, a loving heart, and helping hands. We welcome you today.
If you're new here, we're glad you found us and hope that in this virtual community, you can experience the warmth and the love of these congregations joining together today. And if you are a new person and you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat, please do, because we love to know who's among us. And everyone's invited to stay for virtual coffee hour after the service or join in an after service discussion with me and Laurel. If you have a chalice at home, you can light it with me as we light our congregational chalice. And what we do at the fellowship is when our chalices are lit, we write in the chat, chalice lit in, and then the name of your town. As we light our chalices, may we know that for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. Come, let us worship together. Our tradition at Namaqua is after the chalice lighting to recite our congregational affirmation. And so I invite all of you to join me, muted, and please speak the words that you see on your screen. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its call. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
And now I'll sing our bowl again and invite you to draw deeper into the present moment and into this beloved community. And we'll follow this by a minute of silence.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth, keepers of faith, makers of peace, and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are one.
Now Lydia and I offer you a medley of readings on imagination. I begin with a quote by James Baldwin. "The interior life is the real life. The intangible dreams of a person may have a tangible effect on the world."
From Robert Fulghum. I believe that imagination is stronger than knowledge, that myth is more potent than history, that dreams are more powerful than facts, that hope always triumphs over experience, that laughter is the only cure for grief, and I believe that love is stronger than death.
From Angelis Ariane. In many shamanic societies, if you came to a shaman or medicine person complaining of being disheartened, dispirited, or depressed, they would ask one of 4 questions. When did you stop dancing? When did you stop singing? When did you stop being enchanted by stories? When did you stop finding comfort in the sweet territory of silence?
From Cynthia Winton Henry. Downsizing intellect into rational patterns doesn't eliminate imagination. It deforms it. The mind becomes a dinghy tied to a dock. We need vessels bigger than words. Mystic vision needs whole-bodied forms of speech, spectacle, prayer, and praise. The big divine invites us to open wide to its presence and to bow low. Cherishing imagination is not only real, but key to divine connection. And the way we cherish imagination? To play.
Theodore Geisel, better known as Dr. Seuss, would agree. I like nonsense. It wakes up the brain cells. Fantasy is a necessary ingredient in living. It's a way of looking at life through the wrong end of a telescope, which is what I do, and that enables you to laugh at life's realities.
From J.M. Barrie and Peter Pan. The moment you doubt whether you can fly, you cease forever to be able to do it.
G.K. Chesterton. Fairy tales are more than true. not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they tell us dragons can be beaten.
And finally, an excerpt from Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. Talking to Alice, the Queen said,
Let's consider your age to begin with. How old are you?
I am 7.5 exactly.
Now, I'll give you something to believe. I'm just 101 5 months and a day.
I can't believe that.
Can't you? Try again. Draw a long breath and shut your eyes.
There's no use trying. One can't believe impossible things.
I dare say you haven't had much practice. When I was your age, I always did it for half an hour a day. Why, sometimes I believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. We will give you a chance to consider that question as we receive our offering. One of the ways that Namaqua walks our talk is that we have what we call a half plate ministry, where we give away half of our collection plate each quarter to a local nonprofit that embodies our values. And for this quarter, our recipient is called the Insight Skills Center. And they work with people who have low vision and teach them the skills that they need for living. So I ask you to be generous. There's a donation button in the chat that you could click on, but also you're always welcome to send your donations in the mail.
And the fellowship also has a half plate ministry. We share our plate every week with a different organization. And this week our plate is shared with Together Colorado. Our congregation has been a member of Together Colorado for over a decade now, I think. And Together Colorado works with faith communities across the state, including with Namaqua. And I know Laurel's a part of their clergy gathering up in Northern Colorado. And they work to advance human dignity in areas such as housing, immigration, civic engagement, economic justice, mental health, and climate change. They do this through trainings and organizers who work directly with us. And they've taught us how to be powerful agents of change to create a state that really puts human dignity at the center of the public agenda. So the portion of the plate that we will share will go directly to our annual dues to Together Colorado. So please text generously.
Mm-hmm.
And as you listen to the music, please feel free to share in the chat. What impossible things did you believe before breakfast?
Hallelujah.
What beautiful things you put in the chat. I was like giddy and tingly from just reading all of these incredible visions that you have. And putting them out there is just a part of creating the world we dream about. So the work of this fellowship, which is bringing love, reason, compassion, and justice into this world, and for the work of Together Colorado, expanding our understanding of human dignity in the public realm, we dedicate our offerings.
And we dedicate ourselves, and these are offerings, to the vision of the Namaqua congregation, which is to radiate love, peace, and justice as together we work to build beloved community. Thank you. Boy, between the beautiful music and your beautiful wishes, I'm feeling a little teary, actually. You know, Namaqua has a wonderful tradition, which is that each January we begin our new calendar year with what we call the Decades Service. And in the service, members of every decade from ages 5 to 95 are invited to respond to the question in Mary Oliver's poem, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" Such a beautiful, powerful question. And whatever our age is right now, I think that we all sense that we are in a very unusual time. And I think that many of us in our bones can sense the existential challenges that we face. The stakes are high and sometimes overwhelming. But personally, I feel so grateful to be part of communities like the ones that gathered this morning. We are definitely better together. There is the sacred synergy of our skills and our visions, our imagination and our love coming together to create the world that we dream about. And together we are living into the answers to these powerful questions of our time. For many years now, I've been living with a question that was posed by David Corton. He's a white American author. I think he's best known for his book, When Corporations Rule the World. He wrote another book called The Great Turning, From Empire to Earth Community. And the question he asks at the beginning of that book is, by what name will our children and our children's children call this time? Will they speak in anger and frustration at the time of the great unraveling? Or will they look back in joyful celebration on the noble time of the great turning, when their forebears turned crisis into opportunity? Krista Tippett, I think many of you know, is the host of the public radio program and podcast called On Being. And she was one of our WARE lecturers at General Assembly a number of years ago. She wrote about the power of good questions in her book called Becoming Wise, an inquiry into the mystery and art of living. And she admits that we don't know where to begin to change our relationship with the strangers who are our neighbors, to address the ways in which our well-being may be oblivious to theirs or even harming theirs. We don't know how to reach out or what to say if we did, but we don't want to live this way. She writes, I don't want to live this way. And I say, I don't want to live this way. As she considers the living questions and answers to the important issues that we face, such as labor, education, immigration, refugees, prisons, poverty, healthcare, Krista Tippett says that she longs to rename these issues, that instead of using the blunt metrics of the market, of the economy. What is it that these mean in human terms? She writes that we know in our hearts and minds that we are bigger and wilder and more precious than numbers, more complex than any economic outcome or political prescription can describe. And then she asks, what if love, as Elizabeth Alexander asked on an inauguration day of President Obama in 2009, what if love is the mightiest word? What if love is the mightiest word? Now, the thing about Unitarian Universalism is that ministers like me and Lydia, we don't give you your answers. We can ask out loud these powerful questions, and then we invite you to live into the answers in our communities of seekers. And then we can share in what our own experience has taught us. My experience in my 70 years now of living has taught me that love is the mightiest word. And I believe that love requires imagination, and that these are the keys that could transform empire to earth community. When I talk about love, I mean love as a way of being, not a feeling. Someone who embodied love as a way of being was John Lewis, the civil rights activist and congressman from Georgia who just died this last July. As you probably know, Lewis was a key leader in the 1960s civil rights movement. I was so interested when he described the process of preparation that the activists did for their sit-ins and marches and freedom rides. They cultivated with intent their spiritual imaginations, learning the way of peace, the way of love, the way of nonviolence, by doing things such as studying the Bible and Gandhi, Aristotle and Thoreau. And they worked hard to internalize courtesy as a discipline. They practiced kindness and eye contact, no unnecessary words. The men wore suits and ties and the women wore dresses. And they engaged in role playing. Whites put themselves in the role of Blacks being harassed, and Black activists put themselves in the shoes of police officers, feeling threatened and under orders to gain control. I see these practices as being the practice of cultivating empathy. And it makes me think of what President Biden spoke about in his inaugural address last week, that for unity to occur, the uncivil war that pits red against blue, rural versus urban, conservative versus liberal, must end. He said that we can do this if we open our souls instead of hardening our hearts, if we show a little tolerance and humility, and if we're willing to stand in the other person's shoes, as my mom would say, just for a moment, stand in their shoes. Empathy like this requires imagination, and it's an embodiment of love with the power to transform ourselves and those we encounter. And John Lewis asked a what if question. What if the beloved community were already a reality, the true reality, and he simply had to visualize and embody it until everyone else could see it? So it's a little bit like being the change we want to see, which is how I view the work that we do together in our congregation, and I imagine in yours as well, and UU congregations all over the country and all over the world. being the change we hope to see in the world. So this is the power of spiritual imagination, the power of asking important questions, and then in our own individual lives and in community, living into the answers. I'll leave you with some questions posed by the civil rights activist Valerie Kaur. Kaur is the founder of the Revolutionary Love Project, which seeks to inspire people to ground their lives and their social justice work in the ethic of love. And so this is part of the speech she made at the National Moral Revival of the Poor People's Campaign Service. Another what if question. What if this darkness is not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb? What if our America is not dead, but a country waiting to be born? What if the story of America is one long labor? What if this is our nation's great transition? And what does the midwife tell us to do? Breathe, and then push. And so this morning, we will breathe, and tomorrow we will push and we will labor. Because I feel a breeze of fresh hope right now. And I know there's much work to be done that requires that potent combination of love and imagination. And so what I feel called to do in my wild and precious life right now is simply to be who I am, to be grateful for all that I have, and with humility and hope, to accept life's gifts with grace and gratitude and use them to bless the world in the spirit of love.
Thank you so much, Laurel. That was so beautiful, and so I feel deeply inspired by your words. This is the time when, for both of our congregations, we hold time in our services for community connection, a time for sacred sharing, our time to bring our joys and sorrows into the loving embrace of the community. So if you have a joy or a concern to share, feel free to raise your hand using the participants button, using the button in the participants window, or put your name in the chat. And Tech Usher Deborah will unmute you, or you may see a pop-up window asking you to unmute yourself as well. If you prefer, you can share your joy or your concern in the chat window by sending a chat to everyone, and then Laurel or I will read it out loud. When you do share, whether by voice or chat, please tell us your name and where you live, and then briefly let us know what's in your heart today. And then each of us will put stones in our respective bowls on your behalf.
And every Sunday, Namakwa lights a candle for the joys and the sorrows beyond our congregation, because we know that the world is both beautiful and suffering. And we end our joys and sorrows, if I'll invite you to repeat after me. In our joys and in our sorrow, we are not alone.
Dark of winter, soft and still, your quiet calm surrounds me. Let my thoughts go where they will, ease my mind profoundly, and then my soul will sing a song of blessed darkness soft and still, bring your quiet to me. Darkness, soothe my weary eyes, that I may see more clearly. When my heart with sorrow cries, comfort and caress me, and then my soul may hear a voice, a still small voice of love eternal. Darkness, when my fears arise, let your peace flow through me.
You know, one voice has come down to Namaqua, and we were hoping to have them come again, but then COVID hit, but we will next year. And Deborah Mensch is someone else who we've known for decades, because Deborah and Lydia and I met a long time ago at the Oakland Unitarian Church. So, and actually seeing Pete, I've taken banjo lessons from you, Pete. So many, many connections. It's great to be with you all.
And great to be with you, Laurel. And while we're naming all these things, I just want to name that I know some of our sisters from Mother Heart Circle are also here today, and that's just a deep honor for me. Laurel and her partner Francie and I have been in this ritual group for probably close to all those 30 years, I think. So I'm delighted to have you all here. So way back during my first year of seminary, it was in the fall of 1995 when I was a young whippersnapper. I had a class on ministerial identity with Yalbanzi Charles Johnson. During one of our first classes, he asked us to share who was in our noble court. Noble court? I had no idea what he was talking about. So he went on to explain that it was people who were on your side, who had your back, your supporters, among the living and among the ancestors. I had no problem naming my husband as one of my primary supporters, and I bet I named Laurel as well, and Pat and Kara and Francie, but I had a hard time answering the question about ancestors. That same semester, I had my first class with Buddhist social activist Joanna Macy. And in that class, we stretched our imaginations to talk with animals, with beings from the past and future, and even to imagine our own deaths, which is a powerful Buddhist practice. As an anti-war activist in the 1990s, and to this day, Joanna leads these deep time workshops that invite people into conversations with beings through time as a way to help us understand the extremely long-term impacts of what we're doing today, and especially in the anti-nuclear movement of the radioactive materials that we continue to choose to bring into the world. So we embodied future beings, and we asked questions to people in the class who are the beings of the present. Questions like, what was it like back then when you lived with the constant threat of destruction of the earth? And what was your part in getting us to this new place? She is also part of the same movement that Laurel was just talking about with David Korten in the Great Turning. But our capitalistic system with short-term bottom lines has trained us out of using our imaginations. Joanna Macy believes that imagination is essential to the creation of a new world. You can't create something if you don't first imagine it. Even Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited, whereas imagination embraces the entire world, stimulating progress, giving birth to evolution. Logic will take you from A to B, he said, but imagination will take you everywhere. Now, you have to understand that this was the first time since my childhood that using my imagination was legitimized, was practiced, and even assumed to have a higher purpose. This was so different than any other schooling I had ever had, which definitely fell into the traditional rigorous roles of schooling. Now, when imagination moves into the realm of an experience, an embodied experience that surpasses our normal human understanding, we might call it mysticism. And I remember another class in Yobanzi's early classes when we were encouraged to talk about our mystical experiences, those glimpses we may have had with the profound interconnection of life, or with God, or with our understanding of our place in the vast universe. Yobanzi considered opening ourselves up to mysticism necessary for spiritual identity and central to being human. Talking about it, he felt, moved it from the shadows and gave it more freedom to exist. But so few in our highly rational world speak of their mystical experiences or know what to make of them, because they can feel both profoundly clear and deeply mysterious at the same time. Words are such a limiting form of communication when one enters the realm of the mystical. But still, spiritual leaders give it a try anyway. The Trappist monk Thomas Merton describes his moment of enlightenment like this. In Louisville, Kentucky, at the corner of 4th and Walnut, in the center of the shopping district, I was suddenly overwhelmed with the realization that I loved all those people, that they were mine and I theirs, and that we could not be alien to one another, even though we were total strangers. It was like waking from a dream of separateness. This sense of liberation from an illusory difference was such a relief and such a joy to me that I almost laughed out loud, right there. Now I realize what we all are. And if only everyone could realize this, but it cannot be explained. There's no way of telling people that we are all walking around shining like the sun. I just love that, and I can imagine the brilliance, in his eyes. For many, these moments, these glimpses of realities beyond what we ordinarily experience are life-changing. Some have experienced them through psychedelics, others through years of spiritual practice or a deep connection to nature, and some just stumble upon them. There are moments, beloveds, when I am with you, even on Zoom, and I feel that overwhelm of love and connection. There are moments in nature when I've understood even more profoundly my webbed connection with all of existence. And over the years of rituals with my Mother Heart Circle, there have been times when calling the directions and invoking goddesses was metaphor, and moments when powerful channels to these energies have emerged and flowed through me. Now, I've found when my own channels to these experiences are more open, when I invite myself into a more mystical stance and relationship with life, I too feel more alive, and I can imagine more possibilities and live easily into them. And I have more grace in those times. The stresses of post-industrial life as we know it, constantly bombarding us with bits of important information, wringing out every ounce of productivity from our days, leaves little room for the spaciousness needed for the profound gifts of the sacred imagination. And while these moments cannot be forced, we can develop practices to enhance our spiritual awareness. My current teacher for this work is Cynthia Winton Henry. She is a self-described sensitive artist, theologian, writer, and spiritual guide. She founded Interplay with Phil Porter in 1989 and recently started the Hidden Monastery, a worldwide online community of folks to support cultivating the gifts of both embodiment and what she calls ensoulment. Through this work and through my connections, I've come to see that living in these times that are trying us so tremendously, we are being asked to take on more than our finite bodies can absorb. And we need tools, spiritual tools to support us. Tools our ancestors used, tools available to us now, tools and practices you won't learn in any ordinary school. 25 years after that first class in seminary, through this art of ensoulment, I find myself being asked the same questions, but with different words. Who is on your spiritual team? Cynthia asks us. To which ancestors, biological, famous, animal, or mythical, can I call upon for strength? Now, the answers have not come easily, for I have been well trained in the realm of the rational intellect. It took me over a year of struggle to first even open up to a spirit team. And now I am so grateful that my prayer life is full of people and natural elements that I can draw upon for sustenance. My strong grandmother Yolanda is there, as well as prophetic leaders like Martin Luther King and Jesus and the UU theologian James Luther Adams. Recently, I've added ancestors to aid me in the challenges of parenting. And I've also learned as I've learned how trees communicate, I've called upon their ancient wisdom. I've learned that when I stop being so tied to the limiting dock of the rational intellect, when I stop questioning how real these forces are, their powers actually become stronger in me. And the real or the not is irrelevant to how it informs my way of being in the world. Now, this feels so weird and so naked for me to share in a highly UU rational context. So it really is a bit of coming out for me. But I also know that our Unitarian Universalism is big enough to contain me. And our history contains great mystics, including our own Ralph Waldo Emerson, who's been described as a rare and beautiful spirit who is in communion with a higher world. There's even a UU mystic community right now that draws on our source of direct experience of mystery as their guide. Perhaps you too are highly trained to relegate imagination to childish foolishness and to dismiss the mystical, and stay moored in a way of knowing the world that relies solely on the rational. Or perhaps this service is a breath of fresh air for you, legitimizing what you thought you needed to keep to yourself in this community. Either way, my beloveds, here's your invitation to shake it up a bit, to open your understanding of what's real, or to come out with those practices and experiences that put you in touch with transcendent mystery and wonder. I hope you'll join me and Laurel in the conversation after the service and continue to engage with these questions in the days to come. Blessed be and amen.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive in this great turning. We shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the way. It is time now. And what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the way. It is time now. And what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
Beloved, let us extinguish our chalices, but as we say in the fellowship, not the warmth of love, the light of truth, nor the energy of action. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again.
When we used to meet together in our sanctuary, we would end each service by singing a song that was written for a camp of young people who are Unitarian Universalists. So in a nutshell, this is Unitarian Universalism. And I offer it as a blessing to each of you. It's a blessing you were born, and it matters what you do with your life. What each of us knows about God is a piece of the truth. Let the beauty you love be what you do, and you don't have to do it alone. Cha-cha-cha. I do have some announcements for the Namakwa folks. Next week, we have a very special service. Barbara Fleming is a writer in our midst, and she wrote a play called Stella Seeker. And it's about Seeker who wakes up one morning full of questions about the meaning of life and God and embarks on a quest to find answers. She visited several different churches, gets a variety of responses, and eventually she finds the right church for her. Also, there is an annual celebration that Unitarian Universalists do, starting at the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King and extending through Valentine's Day. It's called 30 Days of Love. It's an opportunity to lift up the ways that Unitarian Universalists and many of our partner organizations are building and organizing by taking bold, courageous action for intersectional racial justice. So the 4 themes are focused on the ones that are in this book, Widening the Circle of Concern. Last week was Living Our Values in the World, and this coming week is on hospitality and inclusion. And so Namakwa folks, today Margot will send out an email to you that includes a variety of activities for all age groups to engage with the weekly theme. And I too want to come out as a mystic.
I'm going to say I have a couple of BVUUF announcements as well. We'll be having our second anti-racism workshop this Thursday, so keep an eye out on your email for details. The team that's coordinating that is meeting this afternoon, and we'll be kind of letting you know where you can find the workshop, how to register, and all those things. So, and also, if you want to get better connected with the fellowship, in the chat window, you'll see a link to our first-time visitors page, or you can email your information to Carol Pranchke, our office manager. Her email is also in the chat window. And just be sure to check out the fellowship calendar and Connections Weekly for all the opportunities we have to stay connected. And now we will move on to our smaller groups for anybody who would like to stay. Deborah, will you explain that to everybody, please?